So have you ever come home from work or maybe even shopping at the store and now you feel completely drained? And now to add on top of that, you also feel this new feeling of sadness and you have no idea where it's coming from. And it can feel overwhelming. So, I have been recovering from an illness, I think a cold, for the last 2 weeks. So I apologize if my voice is a little raspy, but I just wanted to share this experience that I had the other day. I went to work feeling normal, feeling okay. And all of a sudden, I felt this like wave of sadness, almost feeling a little depressed that kind of came over me. And I carried it all day. And when I came home, my partner was asking me, because, he could sense my energy was off and was like, "What's wrong, Jennifer? Is everything okay?" And I was just like, "I just want to go lay down." And it took me until the next day going back to work that I realized that feeling didn't belong to me. And what had happened was I have a coworker and she's been going through a family crisis. And at that time I realized that's not me. That feeling that I'm feeling, this feeling of sadness and depression, is not me. So I just wanted to share today, or I wanted to talk about how to stop being an emotional sponge and to share like exact tools or techniques that I use whenever I realize that I have taken on somebody else's emotions. And I want to help you reclaim your own energetic sovereignty and your own space. Why are people like us tend to be or tend to have like this energetic porosity? Why do we absorb energy? So it's, there's a few different things, okay? So first off, you may be empathetic, okay? You just naturally feel people's emotions. You can put yourself in their shoes pretty quickly and you understand what's going on. And then other times, you can just absorb people's emotions that they tend to carry. So what was kind of different with my coworker, I knew she's been going through this family crisis for a while now. And, obviously not to go into any kind of details. I knew when she came back, she was gone for about a week. And I knew I've known for a while what she's going through. So it wasn't anything new. And then all of a sudden, that day when she came back, I mean, she had a bright smile on. I was happy to see her again. It'd been a while. And that was about the only time we spoke. There was nothing else mentioned. And so, like, that empathetic feeling, like, I know what she's going through. And I tend to feel, for her and through her situation. But this was different, right? So I absorbed this feeling that she had. And so it's kind of like, to further put into perspective, like sensitive people like you and me, we tend to relate easily, like that empathetic vibe. Like we can acknowledge that sometimes our boundary between ourselves and somebody else can get a little fuzzy. But it was still different, right? So I still couldn't pinpoint it at that moment, right? So I also know that there's this idea of hypervigilance. And that kind of, if you've never heard of it, and maybe you have, but if you've never heard of hypervigilance, it just means that maybe from a childhood experience, you grew up in an environment that was could be traumatic, or, maybe your nervous system for some weird reason had to learn how to detect other people's energy to feel safe. So now, as you've grown older, or, as you're in different spaces, your nervous system just automatically picks up on, like, if someone's angry, or if someone's sad. You can pick up on that, and that's just like the way you're made, like your DNA, your nervous system, how now as you're older you have just pick up on things very easily. All right. And then there's also, like the different clairs that you have. So it could also be that maybe in those circumstances, maybe you're picking up on clairsentience a little bit more than usual. Maybe you're a different clair, but for some reason that day your psychic energy is picking up on clairsentience. And clairsentience is just clear sensing. You kind of soak up the energy of everything and everyone around you. So there's also that. And so, like, that day when that coworker came to work, like I said, she seemed in a fairly okay mood. We were happy to see each other, and that was it. I didn't notice anything in her that I felt I could latch on to and feel bad for her or anything like that. Um, Even then, I thought maybe things were going better for her and her family. So I didn't think twice about it. But like I said, I had this like feeling that kind of like just washed over me, and I just felt sad. And I've been there in my life in different times in my life for different things. I think we've all been there when we've had times in our lives that kind of bring out maybe a grief or a sadness. But in that particular moment, I was not in one of those spaces, right? Like, I was not feeling sad for any reason or another. I actually had a great, week that week. And so I still couldn't pinpoint it, right? And like I said, I spent 2 days in this feeling of sadness, not knowing where it came from. And, you know, because I'm human, I even judged myself, like, why are you feeling this way? What is going on? Like, I kept on asking myself this because I couldn't figure it out. And I just, like, in that moment, I just accepted it. Like, I'm just feeling depressed for some reason. Um, so, like I said, I went home that day feeling that way, ate dinner, eventually went to bed. And then the next day, I had anxiety kind of built up within me. Like, I just couldn't pinpoint it. I didn't know where it was coming from. I was just kind of at that point just accepting that something was bothering me, and I just couldn't figure out why. And there I was sitting at work that day, and I was, doing my stuff that I have to do, listening to a podcast. And in that moment, I was like, shit, this isn't mine. And I got mad at myself because, like, you can be as psychically in tune as you want. You can understand yourself. You can know that these kind of things happen. Hypervigilance, clairsentience, you know, being empathetic, absorbing other people's stuff. I know this, right? And still, it took me like a day and a half to realize, oh my gosh, this is my coworker's feeling. And in that moment, the empathy kicked in, right? I was like, oh, this is how she's feeling. And I truly felt bad for her. And I had empathy and I had sympathy, but there's something that like you should understand, and it's something that I have worked on for quite a bit, and it's that I know I can tend to take on other people's emotions or thoughts. And I realized at that moment I was carrying her grief, whatever, whatever she's going through. And in that moment, I realized, okay, like I I like you as a person, but I'm not here to carry your weight of what you're going through. And to be kind to myself and to be kind to her, um I started to tell myself, this isn't mine. So let's kind of go real quick through like some techniques. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, like say you went to the store, this actually happened to my sister the other day. She went to the store and she was waiting. Sorry, excuse me, let me get a little bit of water. She was waiting in line to get some medicine, and the lady in front of, like, there was two ladies in front of her. Well, this is her story, so I'm just relaying how she related to me. So there was two people in front of her, one person getting her medicine with the pharmacist, and another, in between her and the other lady. And she said all of a sudden she felt like this really like angry annoyance with that lady who was taking forever at the pharmacist. And then she was kind of like thinking to herself, I wasn't angry a second ago. What's going on? So in the end, to make the story short, like she realized that the lady in front of her was getting annoyed having to wait for the other lady getting her medicine or whatever. And in the end, when that lady left, the one that was in front of my sister, that lady was very rude to the pharmacist and kind of like snatched her medicine in a hurry and left all angry. And then she realized she had carried on that emotion from that lady, because she said initially she didn't care how long it was taking. She had already accepted that being in the line for her in the pharmacy was going to take a while. So if you ever find yourself in this situation, maybe like my sister, standing in line and all of a sudden you have this like angry feeling come over you, you know, the first technique you should do, or if you're like me, all of a sudden you feel this great feeling of deep sadness or just some emotion or thought that yourself, and this doesn't seem like it's coming from you. So the first thing you do is like you stop, okay? And also don't get angry with yourself if it takes a minute. Like I said, with that, what I was experiencing took me like a day and a half, okay? We're all human, it happens. So stop and ask yourself, is this mine? And then you kind of take a note, right? So feel where it's in your body. Is it in your stomach? Is it in your throat? Like, this is sometimes when I'm feeling a deep emotion from somebody else that's kind of like throwing it at me, or however, like they're just like, throwing their energetic feelings everywhere. So sometimes I'll catch it in my throat and I'll feel that really nasty feeling right here. Or but where is it sitting in you? Is it sitting in your throat? Is it sitting in your chest, your stomach? Um, or is it just more like a feeling? Like, do you feel like a heaviness around your head or in your body or just around you, like your aura? Maybe you're feeling heavier than usual. So that's your first thing you do. It's kind of like an audit, right? Is this mine? And sit with it. you know? And then so, like for me, when I realized, I was like, this isn't mine. And I was feeling it in my throat. And then also just feeling the feeling of like deep sadness. So the next thing I did, and something that you can do for yourself, is ground yourself. Okay, so there's different techniques to ground yourself. So what I did, I put my feet flat on the floor and I closed my eyes and I started taking deep breaths, right? So I, I know sometimes people say like take 3 deep breaths, but sometimes I need more than just 3. Um, so I just sat there and I just took several deep breaths. And I do that because sometimes I need a minute to clear my head, clear my thoughts. And then I can start like envisioning when I ground. I like to envision myself as a tree because I always see trees as like one of the most grounded things you can see in nature. And so I'll imagine my feet growing roots all the way down to the bottom of the earth or the middle of the earth. And then I can feel like the pulses of the earth coming back up. And when I'm able to visualize something like that, I can start feeling more grounded. And you start feeling heavier, but not like because, somebody else's energy is on you. You just start feeling grounded. You feel safe. You feel like that root taking deep, you know, um, taking like a deep root system into the middle. And then, you know, you start feeling yourself calm down. And so that's one of the first things you can do when you realize that maybe you've latched on or absorbed somebody else's energy. So grounding, first and foremost, that's the first thing you should do, ground yourself. And then, like I said, now that you're in this space of visualization, the second thing you can do is imagine like yourself in a bubble. All right. So in that bubble, imagine that it's like not like a bubble that you can pop, right? It would be like a bubble that stuff bounces off of, almost like a ball, right? So it's like bling. So, like if you imagine that and you imagine that bubble around you that things bounce off of, right? You can imagine it in light, or maybe even there's a mirror, like not on the inside but the outside. So it's like reflecting back what's being sent your way. Okay, so that's another way to do it. And it kind of allows you to see like if you imagine that like the bouncy ball bubble, um, maybe at that point, like for me, I could sit there and see that depressing energy, that really sad energy kind of bouncing off of me now. All right. So that's like a way to shield yourself. And so that's another way. Sometimes, all right, doing these things don't always help me either. And depending how strong that energy is getting thrown at you, you may need to ask for help from your guides, your spiritual guides, maybe your ancestors if you practice ancestry work, or if you want to call out for God or the universe, just something outside of yourself. Sometimes that helps too. With the energy that my coworker had sent me, I was able to, it was kind of like coming in and out, like the things that I had done helped a little bit, but then I would feel that sadness again. So after a while, I still did the grounding technique, I still did the shield technique, but I ended up having to call in help from my guides, my spiritual guides, and eventually, well, not eventually, like they did it pretty quick. Like I felt that feeling finally pull away from me. And so something else that I do in moments like that, I sent her a little prayer. I told her and myself, I prayed for her and I prayed for myself. And in that moment, I kind of just said, you know, I pray that you find strength. And I pray that, in this crisis that you're going through, that you can find strength through the people that love you, strength through, the universe or God. And I pray, like, for myself that, I understand for myself that even though I am empathetic and I am caring, I do not carry other people's energy. And I do not allow myself to take on somebody else's journey. And so somehow in the middle of all of that, I felt better. Okay? And so it's also like if something happens like that, maybe it feels a little selfish. But I would say think of it differently, all right? Like if you're sensitive and you're empathetic, like you carry that extra energy anyways. And it's not fair for you if you are constantly taking on the burdens of somebody else. Like you have gone through your own burdens in your life and you have worked through that. So, you know, I feel it's only fair that somebody else has to work through their issues. And in the end, like that's what makes us stronger as people, as humans. And to kind of like for somebody to put that energy on you, like, sorry, sorry, dear, you're going to have to go through it. And as a friend, I can be here for you, but I will not carry that extra burden for you. So it's just boundaries, you put boundaries around yourself, and there is nothing wrong with putting boundaries around yourself. And you get the choice. You get the choice on whether you want to take on people's energy like that. I have personally taken it on so long in my life that no, I'm not going to take on somebody else's energy because it can affect me in negative ways, and I don't want that. Okay, so I'm trying to move my spirit in a better place. And so there's actually one more technique. I haven't mastered this, but I would love to know if you have anything that, if you've experienced something like this. But another technique that some people do who maybe are a bit more advanced than me, you can actually like transmute somebody else's energy. So like, like she sent her her sadness towards me. You can actually also transmute that energy into something that you can use for something else, right? Or maybe in my sister's case, like that lady's anger, she, if she were in that place, she could transmute that energy into something else. Maybe use that anger to get her to push through something else that she may be going through. You see what I mean? So you can also do that. I haven't quite gotten there yet to be able to transmute energy that's sent to me, but again, I'd love to know if you've experienced something like maybe somebody has sent you energy and you're like, yeah, I'm going to use this. I can use this energy today for something else. So that's something else to consider that can be done if somebody sends you energy. And so this is all kind of just like, reclaiming your sovereignty, your energetic autonomy. And like once you're able to kind of set that boundary, you can kind of feel that energy being taken off of you, and you don't feel that heaviness anymore. However you feel it. So like if you're feeling it in your throat, maybe now that's gone. Okay? Um so you can actually feel the energetic shift. Um so there's that. And so like I would just say like, again, setting a boundary is not mean. It's not unkind. It's just taking care of yourself. Because if you can take care of yourself, then you can be there for somebody else, but from a more solid place. So, I would love to know if you have ever experienced anything like that. Maybe you were at a store and all of a sudden you had these weird thoughts that weren't yours. And so that's like the time to like step back and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. I wasn't having these thoughts earlier, or I wasn't feeling this way earlier. And, you know, now, now you have to like figure this out. um, so yeah, please, let me know if you've experienced something like this. Do you ground? Have you been able to put boundaries around yourself? Or if this is completely new, I'd love to know something interesting that you have taken away from this video today. So also, if you've gotten this far, I thank you so much. Please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget, lovelies, every layer that you uncover changes how you see everything. All right, so I will catch you on the next one. Bye.